On this Ram 1500 with the 5.7 Hemi P0521 is an engine oil pressure sensor performance code. In plain language, the PCM is seeing oil pressure information that does not match what it expects under the monitor conditions. The MIL may be on, and the truck may otherwise seem normal, or it may show oil pressure concerns depending on the actual condition. Broadly, this can involve the oil condition or mechanical oil pressure, the sensor signal, 5-volt supply, sensor ground, the engine oil pressure sensor itself, or, later in the path, the PCM side of the circuit. The PCM supplies the oil pressure sensor with a 5-volt feed and a sensor ground. The signal strategy can be a pull-up at 5.0 volts or a pull-down at 0 volts depending on the PCM hardware, so do not assume every vehicle is built the same internally. Start with the basic system checks before chasing the circuit. Then verify the code properly. Save the scan report and the recorded data, clear the codes, turn the ignition off for a minimum of 10.0 seconds, turn the ignition back on, and operate the vehicle under the conditions that set the fault. This monitor runs with the engine running and engine speed above 1,150 RPM. The code sets when engine oil pressure is below the calibrated specification for more than 29.8 seconds with engine speed at or above 1,150 RPM. If P0521 does not return, handle it as an intermittent condition. If it does return, continue with the oil and mechanical checks before doing circuit testing. Next, make sure the engine oil is at the proper level. Check the customer's oil change history and confirm the oil has been changed at the correct intervals with the proper viscosity. Before calling this an electrical fault, consider low engine oil pressure below specification, engine mechanical tolerances out of specification, deteriorated or dirty oil, and oil contaminated by coolant or fuel. If any of those conditions are found, repair what is necessary and verify the repair. If none of those conditions are present, move into the sensor circuit checks. Now isolate the engine oil pressure sensor signal circuit and check it for an open or high resistance. Keep the ignition off when checking continuity. Disconnect the ECU side and the component connector for the circuit being tested. Use the wiring diagram to follow the circuit path and measure the meter lead resistance before measuring the circuit so the DVOM leads do not skew the result. If you need to work at a PCM connector, do not probe the PCM harness connector directly. Use the GPEC Diagnostic 10436 adapter. The adapter can add up to 1.5 ohms of resistance to the circuit, so keep that in mind when looking at the meter. The signal circuit should measure below 3.0 ohms. If it is not below 3.0 ohms, repair the signal circuit for an open or high resistance, then verify the repair. If it is below 3.0 ohms, go on to the 5-volt supply circuit. With the ignition still off and the circuit isolated, check the 5-volt supply circuit for an open or high resistance. Use the same disciplined setup. Follow the circuit with the wiring diagram, account for DVOM lead resistance, and use the GPEC adapter if access at the PCM connector is needed. This circuit also needs to be below 3.0 ohms. If it is not below 3.0 ohms, repair the 5-volt supply circuit for an open or high resistance. Then verify the repair. If it passes, continue to the sensor ground circuit. Next, isolate the sensor ground circuit and check it for an open or high resistance, again with the ignition off. Follow the circuit path, account for meter lead resistance, and protect the PCM terminals by using the proper adapter rather than probing the PCM connector. The sensor ground circuit should be below 3.0 ohms. If it is not, repair the sensor ground circuit for an open or high resistance and verify the repair. If the signal, 5-volt supply, and sensor ground all pass, the path moves to the engine oil pressure sensor. At this point, with the mechanical checks completed and the 3 circuits passing, replace the engine oil pressure sensor. Reconnect the component and ECU connectors, turn the ignition on, clear the codes, turn the ignition off for a minimum of 10.0 seconds, then turn it back on. Reproduce the captured conditions that set P0521 and read the codes again. If P0521 does not return, the sensor replacement corrected the fault, and you still finish by verifying the repair. If it does return, continue to the connection checks. If the code returns after the sensor, inspect the related PCM and component connections. Perform any applicable bulletins. Disconnect the PCM connectors, any related inline connectors if equipped, and the related component connectors. Look closely for connector installation problems, damaged locks, corrosion, water intrusion, seal damage, bent terminals, discoloration from overheating, pushback terminals, spread terminals, and poor terminal tension. Repair any conditions found. Then reconnect everything fully and make sure the connector locks are engaged. Clear the codes, operate the vehicle under the monitor conditions, and read the codes again. If P0521 does not return, the wiring or poor connection problem has been repaired. If it does return after these checks, the diagnostic path calls for PCM replacement and programming, followed by repair verification. The takeaway on P0521 is to prove the oil and mechanical condition first, then prove the signal, 5-volt supply, and ground circuits before condemning the sensor or moving toward the PCM. Keep verification separate from testing, and make the code come back under the same conditions before you trust the direction of the fault. For more diagnostic training, visit stepdiagnostics.com.